Hello and greetings. Welcome to Conversation with Tony Mobley. Today, Conversation with Tony Mobley is simulcast on both YouTube and LinkedIn Live. We welcome our radio listeners from Cincinnati, Ohio by way of Z98. You can hear us on the radio by going to z98.fm.com. On Conversation with Tony Mobley today, I am talking with Mr. Tom Ferguson. This is episode 81 of Conversation with Tony Mobley. We want to thank everyone for being a part of the journey. I want to thank the team behind Conversation with Tony Mobley for all of their hard work. And guess what? I'm asking you to go to conversationwithtonymobley.com. Why do I want you to go there? I want you to go there so that you can participate on our chat and ask your questions. We have a chat called Mukana. You can go there, ask your question, and because you've gone there and asked your question, that question can be voted up and down. And that way, we will make sure that we get to answer your question. Mukana is courtesy of Alex Lindsay and 090. And we thank everyone for this opportunity to participate in the Mukana chat. So go and vote on your questions. Put those questions in. And now we're going to get started with our conversation with Mr. Tom Ferguson. First, let me say, Tom, thank you so much for being here with me today. And the very first question is, who is Mr. Tom Ferguson?
Well, we won't go way back to the beginning in 1950. We'll start, say, about age 11 when my father passed away. And that was a real surprise. He was 44 years old. So I was basically raised by a very strong mother. And she always encouraged me and believed in me and, never told me, you're too young to learn something. I was building Heath kits when I was an early teen and taken to the Army Navy store, surplus store by my brother-in-law, would pick up old headsets and put in an intercom between the detached garage and the house, things like that. I also got my rather unusual sense of humor from my mother. She would always tell stories.
Well, can you share a little bit more about how your mother shared with you this thirst for knowledge?
Well, she was a CPA in the workforce, single mom there for a while, and yet how did she feed this thirst for knowledge? Well, again, at Christmas in '61, I got my first computer. Well, sort of computer. It was made by General Electric, and it was more a kit, an analog, like an analog slide rule. But I had to put it together, wire the transistors in, and then you would move the potentiometers and you'd have your headphones on and you'd listen and null things out. And just like a slide rule, you could figure out calculations. My brother-in-law gave me an ARRL handbook. I was showing it to some guys last night from 1951. A lot of those concepts are still germane today. I mean, antenna design and so forth. So if I wanted to learn something, they never told me I was too young. They just went out there and encouraged it.
Tom, can you explain what that is?
How?
The ALR?
Oh, the Amateur Radio Relay League, if I'm remembering correctly. That's all the ham radio operators out there. I never became a ham radio operator myself, but a lot of the same concepts go into broadcasting. I mean, I earned my uh, Federal Communications Commission commercial license, radio license, at age 15. There was no age restriction. You have to be able to pass the test. So I studied for it. They drove me down to the Federal Communications Commission office in Houston, and I took the test, passed, and got my ticket. That meant by age 16, I was out there riding the bus downtown after school, looking for an after school job. Instead of flipping burgers or something like that, I wanted to get into radio. And I found a place that needed, well, of all things, a janitor babysitter. And the way that works out is what they needed was someone to sweep the floors, but also who had an FCC license. Because the guy who was on the air was Canadian, couldn't hold a ticket. And so 6 to midnight, 6 days a week, that's what they called part-time back then, I would read the meters every half hour, empty the trash, and help the chief engineer. About 3 months later, I wasn't sweeping the floors. They got someone else, and I kind of became the engineer's helper and just learned a whole lot there.
And this is while you were in high school?
This is while I was in high school as a junior and senior. Yes, I was working for a 100,000 watt FM station. Here, I've got a photo if you'd like to see it.
Sure.
Let's see here. This is what a control room looked like back in the 1960s. I mean, you can look at some of this technology. Here you go. That's how we communicated with the folks at home. Rotary dial, no touch tone back then. So 3 turntables. Reel to reel is how we played our commercials. And there were no cart machines. All that would come along later.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Bob Sertovan of San Antonio, Texas. Tom, how long did you approach risk management and decision making when it came to implementing new technologies in a company?
Wow, that goes way later in my career when I started with the city of Phoenix, when I had to start building systems, networks, and risk management. That's really difficult to say exactly how you do that. What you're doing is, I wasn't in that area as much as watching over IT policy. I was the security manager for the city of Phoenix.
Okay. Thank you, Bob, for that question. And our next question is, Tom. Okay. Tom, despite the fact Eric Potter, the question is from Eric Potter, if I have that correctly. Tom, despite the fact that you are quite experienced, are you sometimes struggling with new equipment and new technologies? And if so, can you please give a recent example?
I can. I bought this new Stream Deck sitting here on my desk, haven't implemented it yet. A little bit of it gets into my, what I call analysis paralysis. I want to map out where I'm going. I want to know what every button's going to do, and then I'll program it. I'm sure I can program it. I mean, there are plenty of helpful YouTube videos. We also have David Paskin, who did a 4-week tutoring session on after hours for us, and it was great. And yet, I just want to map everything out because I want it to work the first time.
Which Stream Deck did you get?
I've got the XL,
Okay,
the 32 button.
that's the one I have as well, and
Mhm.
I'm doing very little with it, but I'm using it for conversation with Tony Mobley, and I am using it for office hours, so I am getting some good use out of it.
Well,
And so
that's
the
the
next,
next big project. Yes.
yep. And so the next question is, how has the pandemic changed your retirement/career path?
Well, of course, that shut us all in. And then I started watching more podcasts. Got, I can hear some feedback there. But anyhow, watching more podcasts, and of course, got hooked into the Alex Lindsay orbit and brought me into After Hours. And I watched a show on December 1st of, that would have been 21. And they were going through this list of how would you build out a new studio. And, I was just using a webcam that was on my computer, highly inadequate for what we're doing here today. But
You know why I'm laughing, right? You know
yeah,
why I'm laughing.
well, it comes down to that you got to watch out for those guys over there because they're not safe for your wallet. I started
Absolutely not.
I started building
But
things out and joined Office Hours as a panelist on February 23rd.
yeah, I understand very clearly what you're saying, and I was told by a member of the office hours community that look at it as paying tuition, and I agree that that's the way we should look at it. Look at it as paying tuition. The next question is, what was it like teaching seniors in technology, and do you still get requests for tech support from them?
No, I broke ties with the senior center, but I, for about 5 years, taught at a senior center. Every Tuesday morning, I would go in and would hold court for about an hour. Oh, it went to, honestly. We would take on all questions, or I'd talk about whatever the news of the day was. And I'll tell you, there's nothing that lights up a senior citizen more than to teach them a new trick on their iPhone that's come out with perhaps the new iOS. And then they get to go home and tell their grandchild how to do this, because usually it's the other way around. And they just love the fact that they knew the new trick.
That's very cool. And Bob Sertovan is back. He says, Tom, are you willing to share a success story or accomplishment that you're particularly proud of from your time in the tech field?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my time with the Phoenix channel. The city of Phoenix was just getting into doing its own channel, and we wanted to build that up. I was their very first employee. I went in and started as a video unit supervisor, they called the position. It ended up being chief engineer. But I would say, if I can show you something here, let me pull up another. Then we had to build our mobile truck. And so we went out and bought this truck, and it was completely empty when we started. And then you start moving on through and you start building out the inside. And you want to be able to drop into anywhere to be able to do a council meeting or perhaps just a forum for a particular district. And we had positions there up down at the bottom, you're seeing the audio board and, of course, the technical director's position and video shading, and, of course, the tape decks. But we built this thing out, and then after we would do things live, we would bring it in for our automation system. This is 32 3/4-inch playback decks. Then all the computers needed to run them. And we automated the channel 24/7, 365 with the shows that we would produce. So I guess that's a pretty good example.
Very cool. We have a question from Zachary Sorensen of Queensland, Warwick, Australia. And his question is, how many years did you work in radio?
I worked for KRFM radio for 5 years, and then it was time for a transition. And I applied to a number of the television stations in town, ended up at the CBS affiliate. And so then I started out with Cool Television, KOOL TV Phoenix, and worked for them for a number of years. Started out, of course, in audio, but I learned technical directing, videotape editing, started learning editing on doing it manually. Now we're talking about the tape was 2 inches wide. The reels were about yay big around. So that was the hard way to do it. They did get a computer editor in later in the 70s, and I started cutting my teeth on that. So we did a lot of the documentaries and other editing for that.
Are you doing video editing now? And what are you using if you are?
I just putter around a little bit with iMovie. I would like to learn Resolve. That's probably one of those projects that's going to come up here this year.
Very cool.
So before you ask this next question, I've got to stop you. We haven't quite told a story. And that was one night at the television station, I was watching the public service announcements, and on came a public service announcement about the Phoenix Police Reserve. And I thought, that sounds interesting. And I went across the street because the main station to the police department was right next door to the television station. And I applied. And next thing I knew, I was in the academy.
Wow.
Every Tuesday, Thursday night, and all day Sunday. So did that for 5 months, became a certified reserve officer with the state of Arizona, which had the same privileges as career officers because we go through the same academy. And that was an avocation. That was a volunteer position. We would work evenings or weekends. And so there you go. There's kind of a lead into where you're going.
Okay. And so the next question is, what was it like working in law enforcement and technology?
Well, after 3 years of being a reserve officer and still working at the station, they opened up a position at the police academy. And what they were recruiting for was they were looking for a police officer that knew a little bit about video and television work. What they wanted was a television engineer that knew a little bit about police work. I was the right fit. So I left television, went to work for the City of Phoenix Police Department at that time, and built their video studios for training at the police academy. I was actually sent to a special training school, which included both Phoenix Police and FBI instructors, and became certified to train police officers. And we provided the ability in our studios at the academy to be able to videotape in-service training and then ship it out, and they could look at this during their briefings when they were in the stations getting ready for their shifts. This took some of the pressure off of the in-service training requirement, which is, of course, required every year for police department employees.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. My next question is, are you a magician?
Okay, for many, many years, I've always told people that I have, for a number of years, about 30 now, belonged to the local IBM group. And everybody misunderstands what I mean because they know I'm in video and I'm in computers. And so they're thinking international business machines. No, I belong to the International Brotherhood of Magicians, and I'm actually now Order of Merlin with them. I know I've got a cat named Merlin for those of you who know me, but no, I had the cat before the actual Order of Merlin. I do not perform. However, I do like to dabble in magic, and I've been a student of magic for decades.
That's fantastic. And we are not going to ask you to perform tonight, but the community might ask you to perform at a later date. Please tell us about your continued professional and personal development.
Well, when you start building up this studio, you start using new technologies. And even if you're not building a studio, me being a retired network guy, boy, I love to play with network equipment. You see a little bit over my shoulder here behind me. So trying to keep sharp on that, just do my best. And of course, it's always fun to see what's new and shiny and perhaps start dabbling with that too. You're muted.
I'm sorry, I was asking you, can you share what your current setup is?
Well, I can do a little bit of that. Let's see. Here we are from behind. I've got my triple monitors, and then up here is the teleprompter and the camera. I operate the switcher from Mix Effect here on an iPad. And there you go. Here's another
Amazing
angle on the same thing. How's that?
And all of that since you have been a part of office hours?
Not all of it. I started out with some good computers. I've upgraded since then. You know, new things come along. You got to do that. So I try to stay current.
Okay. Are you using both Macs and PCs?
I only have a Melee for a little bit of PC work that I do, but pretty much is a 99% Mac shop here.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for sharing that. We have a question from Brandon Bertram. I have heard you are a collector of old tech. What's your most interesting piece of old gear?
Wow. That just kind of depends on what the subject is. I mean, let's see here. Wasn't expecting this, but here's a piece of old gear. And I will come up here. Let's see. How do I want to show this? Sorry for the delay.
No problem.
This is what's called a handheld calculator. This is the smallest battery operated calculator you could get back in 1973.
Wow.
I mean, it's got a fluorescent digit display, still works, did a little refurb on the batteries, and yet you can still do your old calculations right there. So,
And I'm going to share with
oops, I
you.
didn't show you. Here you go. There it is. That thing is just enormous. But that's the state of the art technology circa 73.
Very cool. I inherited a wooden AM radio from my mother upon her passing, and it still works. It has tubes in it, and I think that's the oldest piece of technology that I have. Let's see. What did your setup look like before working with office hours? And that's from Bob.
Well, it was an iMac. I have since upgraded to the Mac Studio. But no, it wasn't anything terribly bad. I have always liked the triple monitor setup and run two computers here because it's easy to offload just side tasks off to the second computer and let it run. I also like feeding my Plex server, which is something that my wife's probably in the other room enjoying right now. How we can watch shows that we used to have on Blu-ray and DVDs, and yet, you don't want this collection on the shelves anymore, so you put it all into the rack, and the rack is kind of the direction I've been going with things. Used to have the equipment all scattered around, and here you go. So I ordered this rack and decided to put all the equipment together in one place. So I've got all my network attached storage down at the bottom, a little power distribution, the network equipment, and then of course all the stuff that makes the magic happen at office hours, the actual ATEM Mini Extreme, and I have a matrix switcher up there and so forth to just power whatever I want to do here with the video side of things.
And how did you get the CDs and DVDs into the Plex?
You do that by using ripping software that you can buy, and you do it on well, in this case, it was mostly during the iMac. And of course, that was real easy to do. I mean, what else were we doing at the first of the pandemic? So I decided, let's get this Blu-ray collection and DVD collection and consolidate everything. I've got all this extra time now. So I went for it.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Can you share a past success from your new job?
Well,
and the
new
job.
Let's talk about the new job.
The new job is the new job is office hours.
Well, is that the new job? I mean, goodness, I have not been in the workplace since 2009. I am firmly retired. I did get a call from a headhunter last August. Actually, it was on my birthday. I don't know if someone was pranking me at first, but it turned out it was genuine. They wanted someone to come in and do a temporary gig while they were doing a recruitment. But no, I am firmly retired. I'm not going back into the workplace. I'm comfortable and I like it the way it is. As far as office hours is concerned, I just enjoy going onto the panel, also participating in the after hours discussions. Uh, you just never know where they're going to go.
And I want to say, I thanked you at the time, but I want to say thank you again for your assistance with helping me be able to use my setup to bring in my Apple TV and broadcast it into Zoom. And I was not able to do that until you gave me some directions and some suggestions and actually shared the link with me on the product that I needed in order to be able to do that. So I wanted to say thank you again. It has made a tremendous amount of difference in me being able to utilize that with um, conversation with Tony Mobley, as well as my work with the House of Worship. So I wanted to say thank you again.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
And Brandon Bertram is back from Indianapolis, Indiana. Can you give us a tour of your epic t-shirt collection?
Oh boy. Well, I normally keep this under wraps, wear plain black during office hours, but uh, I do have quite the t shirt collection. Let's see here. We'll start here. You have Maslow's hierarchy. Well, this is Maslow's hierarchy of basic human needs, amended with perhaps some with the internet and how much we need it compared to everything else in the world. Right. I've also talked about the seven dwarfs on occasion because it's true. 6 out of 7 dwarfs are not happy, but one is. So you got to take that into account. For the network guys out there, they'll recognize this. And IP addresses, there is no place like home, 127.0.0.1. So there's a few of them. And of course, then we have one last one I'll throw in here. An apple a day keeps Windows away.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Brandon, for asking that question. And our next question is, what is next for Mr. Tom Ferguson?
I have no idea. It could be anything. If we actually clear up some of the variants, I know some folks think that the pandemic is over. I have to be a little more careful here in this household because my wife has polycystic kidney disease and we've got to be exceedingly careful with her health. So we play it a little safer than most. We'd like to go back to traveling, for instance. She just absolutely loves to travel, and I tag along and love to play with my photography. So I would say that would be next if possible.
What are the cameras that you are using for your photography?
I've always been in the Canon collection. I started out with a 5D Mark II. Actually, I started with the 20D when I came over from film. And then the Canon Mark II on through to the Mark IV. And now I've got the EOS R5 camera.
Okay. Okay. And did it take you a long time to transition from film to digital?
No, no. Uh, I did go through a lot of film, did my own processing and printing and darkroom work. Okay. After you've inhaled enough, fumes from the fixer and the stop bath and so forth, you don't miss that. I started getting into Photoshop and never looked back. Don't need to play with the chemicals anymore. I absolutely love Lightroom and use use that primarily for my editing and archiving.
And I understand exactly what you're talking about. That was one of the things that I learned in high school. We actually had, I went to a project-based high school, and we had one quarter of the year where we actually did nothing but projects. And one of the projects was photography. And we had to learn the whole dark room setup and processing, and so printing the film to paper and that whole. So I understand exactly what you mean when you talk about the chemicals and stuff. So I appreciate that. I understand. Brandon is back with another question, and he says, if you did have to return to the modern workforce today, what could you see yourself doing?
Well, you don't have to know necessarily the craft to help manage people and guide people in the right direction. I've got a lot of the management background. I managed a network crew, a technical services crew, probably one of the scariest things I ever did in my life. Uh, the technical services crew was the big iron guys that maintained the operating systems. And I was coming out of network as the network manager and asked to take over that group. And I didn't know anything about what they did. I mean, when I was back in network, I could cover if we had a router problem or something and someone had the day off. But boy, this was completely new to me. So I walk in and I remember the first day I was at the table, and I've got probably 100 years, maybe even 200 years worth of experience sitting around this table, and they're looking at me and they're thinking, and you're going to help us out. And so I had to explain to them that that was not my job. My job was to make sure that they had the resources that they needed to get the job done. That means if they needed budget, if they needed time, if they needed contractor help. And I also wanted them to understand that they were my group and I was going to give them air cover. They were not going to have to take a lot of the flack that they had in the past. If anyone wanted to complain about my group, they better be talking to me. And so something like that would probably be where I would be going. But uh, no, knock on wood, here we are. I'm doing fine and I'm not planning on going back to work at all.
I hear you. I hear you. Bob Sutherland is back again. He says, "What type of photography do you like?"
Uh, both landscape and wildlife photography. So you'll find me, out there taking I really enjoyed workshops. Let me pull up something here if I can. Uh, I remember going to a wildlife preserve out in Texas and was having a good time. And I definitely wanted my cheetah shot. Just had to have that. But let's see here. This little fella came up to the bus, was very chatty and talkative, but I tend to, go out there and sometimes I find the ones that are comical in nature. For instance, the second giraffe in this photo.
That's very cool. Tom, do you take any photography with your phone, with your smartphone?
A little bit, not much, but it's certainly the one that's with me. So uh, I do like playing with it. I When I was at the senior center instructing people, I would give them tips and techniques. For instance, you're outside, it's a bright sunny day, you're going to take a photo of someone. Uh, Turn on the flash. This is counterintuitive. I don't need any flash out here. It's a sunny day. But if you turn on the flash, it then fills in the dark shadows under the eyes and things like that. So, yeah, I play with the phone, but mainly the big camera.
Did you instruct the seniors in Android and iOS, or was it one or the other?
No, it was just Apple products. As a matter of fact, as part of our thing was we told people we did not do Windows.
Okay. We have a question from Guy Cochran. He says, "What has been your greatest achievement?"
I would say my greatest achievement is actually several achievements all kind of rolled into one. And that is the fact that I reinvent myself. I started out in radio and then squeaked my way into television as an audio guy and then learned what was there and then decided to go out and build studios for the Phoenix Police Department, reinventing myself again. I went over to the Phoenix channel and then I decided to make a big leap. After 20 years in broadcasting, I reinvented myself as an IT guy because I knew personal computers and little computers, and the IT department was just starting to learn about these things. They were big iron. And so I taught them a little bit about them. I was writing the exams for them to do recruitment. And then I thought, here I am as a chief engineer of the Phoenix channel, and I'm topped out as far as my pay scale is concerned. So why don't I go work for the IT guys and start learning some of that stuff? And then I
Mm.
reinvented myself to build their network and move into the technical services area as a manager. And then finally, the last decade was, and this probably, if you want something to put the crown on it, I was the IT security, enterprise security manager for the city of Phoenix, Arizona, 14,000 employees, and of course, responsible for the security of all the computers within the 525 square miles and all our facilities.
Wow, that's so cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Ike Potter asked, "Will you buy a Merlin, an ATEM Extreme to keep warm all the time?" And you have to tell me what a Merlin is because I don't know.
Okay, well, here you go. When I first got my ATEM Mini, Tony, it was on my desktop. And let me see here. I'm going to switch over here. There you go. And Merlin's the cat. And Merlin is a heat
Ah,
seeker.
okay.
And he would sit there and he would snuggle up with the ATEM, and all of a sudden he'd hit a button and it would fade to black. And that's part of the reason that the ATEM moved to the rack, was because Merlin was always stepping on it. I couldn't use the buttons. I had to cover them up with a clear plate. And so it was absolutely nothing but decorative on my desk. So the cat was driving me nuts, and thus it ended up in the rack. And, well, there's the rest of the story.
And so I'm thinking that Merlin was a piece of equipment, and it's your cat that was staying warm with the ATEM. Wow,
Yeah, because they run hot.
that's so cool. All right. Bob asked, he says, "Great giraffe pics."
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. And this is from Guy Cochran again. He says, do you have an idea for a future show that our merry band of producers could create?
Absolutely. I was listening to Alex today, and he seemed to be warming up to a show about photography. And boy, I could
Mm,
get all over that. Uh, you know, I would love to show some of my uh, photos that I've taken over the years. I mean, here, I'll show you a couple real quick. Uh, Here's Monument Valley at night, just a little bit of starlight. And then this was just a close up I took of a window at Lake Tahoe, just seemed pretty. Then you got New Orleans, Bourbon Street, the Mimes. Uh, well, that's just a personal picture. Whenever we go over to San Diego, you know where you can find my wife. She'll be out listening to the surf and reading a book.
very
And then
cool.
finally, back when they did the Shamu shows. So, I would love to share and talk to people about photography all day long, practically.
That's thank you, Guy, for that question. Wow. I really enjoyed those, Tom. Thank you. So guess what, Tom? We're out of
Mm.
questions.
Oh, well,
And you know what? That's okay
is that bad?
because and the reason why I'm going to give people a few minutes to put in some questions if they'd like, but if they don't, I want to share some things with you. Um, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on Conversation with Tony Mobley was because you inspired me. I'm retired as well, but I had to retire because of health issues, and I had to retire early. But I wanted to say to you, you inspire me to continue to seek knowledge and to try things and to experiment and so I wanted to have you on primarily because I wanted those people who are a little bit older to think that there are things that they can still learn and not to give up and to be encouraged. And I see you and I see you as a role model. And I wanted to have you on so that you could share your knowledge and your experience. And I'm one of those people who has sort of bit the bullet in terms of always wanting to learn new things and be inspired. And so today I was playing around with video pencil and I was playing with Mimo Live and I was doing a lot of different things. And uh, you are one of the people amongst many of the office hours community that inspire me to try new things. I'm playing around with Canva. I don't know anything about Canva and integrating it with Keynote, and but I'm having to do it because in some ways the house of worship that I'm working with has has sort of requested certain things of me, and most of the time it's stuff that I don't know. So I have to try to figure it out. And um, well, funny thing happened today in the training with David Paskin was that we were talking about Canva, and I was doing stuff in Canva for the House of Worship, and I was doing it wrong, but I was doing it in such a way that I got the job done. And so even in, failing, you get an opportunity to learn. And so I wanted to say thank you so much for being a role model in the desire to continue to learn and to experiment and try things. So again, thank you so much for being here with me today. And so Eric Potter asked, do you have tips for preparing ahead of time for retirement?
Yes, I can handle this one. You need to prepare for retirement your entire life. I'll tell you a little story that about my mom, and that is that I warned you about her sense of humor, and anytime she would call you up to wish you happy birthday, maybe you're turning 22, and she'll say, well, welcome to your 23rd year, because you can always say that on that 22nd birthday it's the opening of your 23rd year. Or say you're turning 25. Well, just think you're now at the dawn of your second quarter century. Oops, that's digging a little further. And of course, when you turn 30, you'd expect her to talk about here you are at the dawn of your fourth decade. Well, I thought I was pretty safe when it came to 31. What could she do other than say, son, it's now your 32nd year? I was wrong. She said, son, just look, you're halfway to Social Security. So, in order to really answer the question about retirement, you need to plan your entire life. This is not something you start doing in your 50s. I mean, yes, it hurts. Put that 5% or more, if you can, into your 401. If you've got any sort of match with any company, take it. Fund that first. Do anything you can to put away for it. I mean, honestly, when my dad died at age 44 of a heart attack, I'm now 72. I never expected to be this old, but I planned for it. And so now I can comfortably sit back and say, nope, I retired at age 58 and I don't need to do this anymore. And so I would just say anything you can do to plan for retirement, start yesterday.
Thank you, Bob, for that great question. And I think we're ready for our last question. The one question I have, and I apologize. If money is no object, what would you do as
What would
far
I
as
do?
technology is concerned?
I think I did it. I built out this office and this system. It pretty much lacks nothing. Although you look at Guy Cochran's DVE store, and there sure are a whole lot of shiny toys. I could
Yes,
not
there
trust
are.
myself to go on a tour there. I'm sure he would extend that if I could make it up there. But you just never know what you'd find.
I agree. I agree. And this is the last question. You're speaking to the world. What do you want them to know?
Well, I gave this some thought because I knew this was your last wrap up question. And I just wanted to say that if you want to be a success, the best way to do it is to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are and listen to them, because their success will shine on you and bring you up as you go. Your best tools are your two ears for listening. Use them a whole lot. Think about talking after you've used your ears and listening. And by listening, you need to also support the people that work for you. If they look good, you will look good. And the last thing I would say is probably you need to be able to reinvent yourself. When you see yourself plateau out and you've done what you can do in a particular area, well, look at that other one that's just a little bit maybe off kilter from where you are now and maybe make a jump. I did 5 times.
Wow. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom Ferguson, so much for being here with me today. And thank you for having a conversation with me. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here today. And we want to say thank you to everyone for participating in this conversation with Tony Mobley. Conversation with Tony Mobley is produced by Value Audio Visual Professionals who meet daily in office hours globally, hosted by Alex Lindsay. Thank you, Z98.1 FM, LinkedIn Live, YouTube, Conversations with Real People. Last week, I had a great conversation with Miss Patrice Laird Walker, Building Healthy Reading Culture. And when you have time, please go back and look at the 80+ episodes of Conversation with Tony Mobley. I think you will find something that you like and hopefully is helpful. Conversation with Tony Mobley can now be heard on 98.1fm.com, our radio audience in Cincinnati, Ohio. Thanks to Taylor Sunderhouse, the team behind Conversation with Tony Mobley, for making this happen, and to Mr. Tom Ferguson. Thank you for the conversation today and for doing the work that you do. All right, everybody. Coming next week is singer-songwriter Ms. Doria Musk. Doria Musk returns to Conversation with Tony Mobley. We want to say take care, everyone, and we will see you soon. Take care. Good night. God bless. Bye-bye.